Um, so welcome to the Manga in the Middle presentation. If you are an awesome librarian or educator looking to learn about manga for middle grade, you are in the right spot. And if you're not looking to learn about that, well, you're here now and you'll have a great time. So please hang out and stay. We're so happy that you're spending part of your Saturday joining us for the Comics in the Classroom virtual conference. As you can see from our lovely starting slide, this conference is brought to you in part by Exton, who is a generous sponsor of the conference. And as you join into the panel, we would really love it if you would just drop into the chat, maybe where you're joining the conference from, if you are a librarian or educator or anything you want to share about where you are in your journey with providing manga to students. And yeah, we just love to get to know you just a little bit as we get started. And then throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, feel free to drop them into the chat because I will be monitoring that and asking questions live if needed. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to answer any questions. And let's go ahead and, get started. So again, this is the Manga in the Middle presentation. And we are so excited to talk to you today about comics in the classroom. Woo! And like I said, if you want to drop into the chat where you're from, what your role is in regards to providing manga to middle graders or other ages, we'd love to hear from you, and questions can go into the chat at any time. And today our presenters are the wonderful Amanda. She is a middle school librarian. And like all of our presenters today, we are on the Texas Maverick graphic novel reading list, and Amanda is our wonderful chair. And next we have Karina. She is a middle school library media specialist on the committee, and this year, she won the Texas Library Association's Librarian of the Year Award. And next up, we have Rebecca, high school librarian. Also Maverick list. Leslie, who works at the Austin Public Library, and also one of our amazing Maverick list. And me, I'm a former teen services librarian and I work in city government, and I'm going to be the moderator today. So like I said, drop into chat what you need, what your questions are, and you don't need to raise your hand. Just let me know via chat what your question is. All right.
Let's go ahead and get started. So before we jump in, we just wanted to let you guys know that this is going to be focusing on manga. A lot of times there is a misconception between graphic novels versus manga, and we will talk about the differences and what makes manga very unique and special. And for some librarians get a little scared when they think of manga, but we're really trying to hope to get you excited about this because so many of our students really love to read this type of literature, and we want to make sure that we get it into our public libraries, our school libraries. And so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start with Karina.
All right. Hi, everybody. So one of the biggest misconceptions about manga is that people mistake it for a genre. So graphic novels and manga are a format, and they utilize a sequential art to tell a story. So graphic novels are often used as an umbrella term for graphic fiction, graphic nonfiction, graphic memoirs. There's also trade paperbacks, which are comic book arcs compiled into volumes, and sometimes this does apply and is applicable to manga. Yeah, okay. Did my video go out for some reason? That's random. Okay, thanks.
So manga is an umbrella term for, like Karina said, sequential art originally produced and published in Japan. It's a format, not a genre. It's typically black and white, and it reads from the back to the front, from right to left, which can confuse people. But most manga these days, if you open it like a normal book, the front page will be like, "You're reading this wrong. Please go to the other end." The spine is on the left-hand side when you pull it out to look at the cover. And manga covers all genres at this point. You got your action, your mystery, your adventure, romance, comedy, slice of life. Some of my favorites are the science fiction and mecha categories, because who doesn't love giant robots smashing each other? But then you have fantasy, gender bending, and historical. And there's classics in all these genres.
So some terms to know that you should probably become familiar with as you're going through manga. One of them is shonen, and that's your action adventure. A type of manga that's really written for young adult and teenage boys. That's that war genre and the monsters, but there's also tends to be comedy and friendship in it. You have shoujo, which is more written for the teenage and young girls. This is where you've got romance and comedy and drama and the coming of age and all of that together. I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this because I do it all the time. Kodomomoki, which is that cutesy stuff. Tends to be more of the children's and the little, and you might see like the chibi cats and stuff in here. And then we have there's a whole other category here, and one of them is seinen and josei that targets those 18 plus audiences. A lot of times you're going to see these as that mature. If you're looking at ratings, sometimes it's a 16 plus, but normally it's an 18 and 20 plus, 21 plus, and there may be a lot more with that romance type that involves more physicality between peoples in it here. You'll see sometimes these are labeled as boy love and girl love, and josei and hente in there too. So that's that older category that we don't always see, but are popping up more, not more. And then there is something new that is really becoming popular here in the United States, and that's the light novels. And light novels are novelization of manga. In some cases, the light novel was written first, and then the manga and anime have been created based on it. It's a good bridge. I love to use these with my reluctant readers because I look at them and say, you've already read the first 3 or 6 chapters of this manga. You know the story. This just gives you more information, and then you're actually just reading a novel. So it's a great bridge over. It is chapters. Sometimes it's some illustrations in it, but it's not to the same extent of manga is. And something to keep in mind, manga is not anime. And even though the manga and the anime have the same title, the same characters, the same storylines, sometimes anime has more to it, or they change the story into it, just like when we go and read a regular novel and then we watch the movie and things can be different. So you do have to keep in mind, they're not always the same. So keep that through there, and then light novels are coming in.
And I think something to add to that is that it has become such a big deal because Netflix is dropping so many anime, right? And
Yes.
so the kids come in and they're like, oh, I saw this on Netflix. Do we have the book version of it? So I think that that's really helped bring an awareness to this genre or this type of book that hasn't been as much before. So I'm excited. Some of the benefits of graphic novels in libraries and curriculum, which I feel like is where, if you're here, hopefully you are a fan of manga or you're a fan of getting manga into the hands of your readers, but we still have some reluctant librarians out there that, and teachers that believe that manga isn't legitimate or isn't something that can be used to help increase student knowledge. Now, it also obviously is for entertainment purposes as well. So it's important to know that there's lots of different types of manga, but even the classics out there are being redone in the manga format that our students love to read. And so they're able to get the classic novel of, Othello and a manga format, which I love because it's taking the way our kids love to read and meshing it with, the classics that we're telling them that they still need to read in high school and in middle school. So I love that that's happening, because we have all different types of readers and learners in our schools. And it's so important that we try to meet them where they are and what they're interested in. That's how we keep kids loving reading. And you may not be a fan of a certain type of reading, but we feel like it's so important to have all different types of books in our libraries for all different types of readers and learners.
Okay, so to kind of piggyback off of what Amanda just mentioned, well, I work in the Rio Grande Valley, which is the border of US and Mexico here in Texas. And the majority of my students are bilingual or predominantly Spanish speaking. So I have a lot of students who read manga because of its popularity in anime in Mexico. And what I really love about manga and in the library is that it really helps them with their visual literacy skills and just overall literacy skills, really helps them begin reading in English and understanding stories, right? Plus that camaraderie that they have with other people on campus that they can partner up with for over their love of anime, which is great. So some of the benefits of incorporating this specific format is that not only does it increase the students' visual literacy skills, but students see the emotion and relate it to the dialogue that's presented in the text. And it increases their awareness of emotions because it's something that they can see, it's something they can even experience, right? Now, there's usually some pushback, not just with manga, but graphic novels in particular, for some reason, with some teachers. They feel like they're deviating from the curriculum if they try to incorporate graphic novels or manga, but this couldn't be further from the truth because this format actually really lends itself to increasing knowledge of tone and mood, right? Not just through the text, but through the images as well. And the art styles also, every illustrator has their own style, and the way that they incorporate that into storytelling is great. It exposes new ways of storytelling for the kids, not to mention that they can create their own stories, and students encounter new art and new illustrators and new authors. How it supports our struggling readers? Well, they have that visual context to help them increase their vocabulary. If they're not necessarily sure what a word means, then the graphics itself can um, help them convey that meaning. It can limit the text, although sometimes there is a lot of text. It can be text heavy sometimes, but it's easier to read when you have some illustrations next to it, right? Because those illustrations in the end support the understanding for our students.
So we want to kind of go through how we select the books that we put in our libraries and all that goes into that, especially with the leveling. Manga is kind of its own beast in that category, right? Because which I feel like is what makes a lot of librarians hesitate, because if you're not a manga reader, you're maybe more hesitant to purchase it without knowing what's in all of these different novels. And some of them can be very extensive, have a lot of volumes. So that's why it's so important for you to, do your research and know which ones that you feel are going to best fit your students and your population.
So here's just some general tips. I'll be honest, I'm a huge manga reader. I've been reading manga for about 20 years or so, so I'm very comfortable with picking it out and pulling it. But some of the things I do pay attention for are things to know what circulates. What are my kids wanting to read? I need to know what's been showing on Hulu and Netflix and what's popular on Crunchyroll and Fan Media and all of those to see what they're going to enjoy and what's coming out. I do also keep out for those tie-in series. Those new mangas come out, new animes come out. I kind of need to know what's happening with that and pay attention for it. I'm also trying to be familiar with the bindings and formats. One of the things that we're seeing a lot of is that manga is coming out. It comes out very, very frequently in overseas. And the United States has to get those special licensing. So they've started doing a lot more where they license it digitally first. So I need to watch for when it comes out digitally. Will it come out in paper? So that's something to pay attention for too, because sometimes your students will ask for this manga, but it's only digital. Does it come out in a digital format, e-format you can read and pull out? The big thing, every librarian knows this and they'll go with it, is that these go out of print so fast. So you might have a series and you're missing number 16, but you can't get it. So you really have to kind of pay attention for what's available and what's not. And then think about where you can purchase. For schools, who are the existing distributors you use? You're going to be able to see a lot of them on those existing jobbers that we've got, but sometimes it's easiest to go to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and any of the specific comic and manga shops to get your hands on it. We've got some great readers out there of comics and manga that are just really available to go to. Sometimes that independent bookstore is the one you hit. So you kind of look at that. The other thing is a general knowledge, and it's not on here, but you want to pay attention for what the ratings are too as well when you're looking, because that is a huge indicator of kind of where is it appropriate and is it worth it then to go purchase, because a series can sometimes change rating levels as it's going on. And as Amanda said, some series are long, so that's another thing.
All right, so figuring out if these books fit in your collection, there's some questions you need to ask yourself. First of all, being familiar with the curriculum and finding material that supports the curriculum. Does the material meet your collection development guidelines? That would include knowing the age range that's suggested versus what's acceptable at your school and basically your town. Is the author or the artist, if there's two different people working on it, critically acclaimed? Have these mangas won any awards or are notable in professional contexts? Is it on the TLA Maverick reading list or some other reading list? Because we include a number of manga in our lists. And then, of course, with most collecting and researching books, does it have good reviews? Do professional reviewers like it? There's so much manga out there these days that there's no way that you can have even the first volume of everything. So relying on professional reviewers, especially if you're not familiar with manga and its different genres and things like that, it's really, really a good idea to rely on some professional reviewers.
I was muted, sorry. So the following should not affect your selection, and this doesn't just count towards manga. This is, how part of our job is to make sure that we are not looking at race, religion, nationality, political views, gender, or sexual identification of an author, illustrator, or characters, and making any sort of judgments against that when we're purchasing manga. It more often than not, it's gonna have some bad language. That's just, kind of part of it. And then there's always usually, if we're doing like an action adventure one, there's going to be some violence as well. A lot of times that might be what draw the kids in and get them excited and get them hooked on this type of book. And so whenever you're choosing books, particularly with manga, if you don't personally agree with it, that should not have any impact on you purchasing it for your library. And this obviously is from our presentation at TLA in 2018, where we did a whole series on purchasing graphic novels and manga. We called it the Reluctant Sidekick. And so if you ever needed any sort of resources from our Maverick graphic novel reading list committee, feel free to reach out to any one of us. But it's definitely important that we keep this in mind, particularly when we're looking at our manga collection.
Okay, so speaking of manga recommendations and where you can get resources, we're just going to start you off with 4 major, references, people that we highly recommend you follow, whether it's on social media or through their websites. The Manga Librarian is a really good resource. Her name is Ashley Hawkins, and their blog includes everything from manga terms to know, useful resources, wakelet collections of information, book reviews, even book lists for different maybe even themes or age levels is what I've seen them post on Twitter. Manga in Libraries is actually a webinar series hosted and organized for the most part by Jillian Ruse. And I think it happens almost every month, right? And they have different topics from disability visibility, Manga 101, social emotional learning, LGBTQ manga, BIPOC representation in manga, even spooky and scary manga. If you go to their websites, they actually have all the webinar recordings from previous webinars, and I highly recommend you watching them. Not to mention following Jillian JR Librarian on Twitter. Such an amazing resource. Jillian has a bunch of information about manga, and she does a bunch of reviews, usually daily, about the manga that she reads. And then usually if she's posting something, she also has, I guess, recommendations for other people to follow as well who really understand and advocate for manga in libraries. And then SM Wordsmith, who is Sarah, she's awesome. She has a lot of recommendations for manga too, especially for different age groups and how you can make it work in your library. A lot of curriculum connections and even information about how to advocate for manga in your library in case you're getting that pushback.
So we put together some lists here for y'all. Since I come from elementary before I was a middle school librarian, I thought I would just kind of throw out some of these series for you guys to think about where you're at. Like you might be at an elementary and middle school, high school, might be a public librarian, about where you could start to find some popular series that would definitely be good for students. At my middle school, I do have a lot of these titles anyway. So I know it says upper elementary, but if I have kids that are looking to get started in manga, I usually recommend Splatoon, Pokemon, Legend of Zelda. Those have been very popular. And then a lot of times kids come to me from middle school loving the Warrior Cat series. So then I can also show them the Warriors manga selection too. So it's that connection between the two of those series. Cheese Sweet Adventures is very popular with a lot of my students. And then Yotsuba is also one that I can't keep on the shelf as well. So even though it says upper elementary, you know that middle school, well, if you come from middle school, that is a whole special category in and of itself when it comes to ordering, because I have my little baby sixth graders all the way up to my old 14, 15-year-old eighth graders that are too cool for any of this and already feel like they're in high school. So it's a big age range in maturity. So I just wanted to make sure that if you are in the middle school area, that you know that a lot of these titles would be perfectly acceptable to have in a middle school library.
Okay, so middle school, and the whole point of this webinar, right? Middle school is very unique in that the kids are in this state of limbo almost, right? So any literature that you provide not only has to cater to their, I guess, development, right? Their academic achievement, where they are academically, but also how relevant it is to who they are and their identities. I have a lot of students in sixth grade who are already asking for very mature manga, but I have to keep into consideration the developmental appropriateness of the literature that I'm putting out into the collection, not to mention its ties into the curriculum and how it fits into the collection development process, right? So not only do a lot of the elementary manga, I guess, appeal to a lot of my students, whether they're in sixth, seventh, or eighth. That's what I love about the selections that Amanda just went over, was that they pretty much lend itself to any grade level in sixth, seventh, or eighth. But once you get to middle school, especially for my eighth graders, they're ready to explore something a little bit more challenging. So how do you as a librarian begin to kind of figure out what type of manga is best suited for the collection for that age range? So we've actually compiled a list of ones that we felt were not just popular, but also appropriate for students who are maybe ready for that challenge, but also keeping into consideration where they are. So Assassination Classroom's a really good one. Let's see, what I'm gonna just name the ones that I know on this list that I can't keep any of them on the shelves now that I think
I
of
know.
it. Like, what am I saying, right? But for the most part, Assassination Classroom, Bleach, obviously, Cardcaptor, Demon Slayer, Fairy Tale, Fruits Basket. Oh yeah, that's one. One Piece, Pokemon, Sailor Moons, Splatoon, especially the ones that are based on video games. They love it. Super cute. Maximum Ride, that's definitely another one. A lot of the Tokyo Pop ones, Tokyo Ghoul, Yotsuba. So, oh, Zelda, of course. Promised Neverland. What am I saying? Yeah. So, you know what? Just all of them. Just all of them on this list. What do I say? That's why we listed them. But this is just a point of reference. This is just a starting point for you. So, and of course, every library is different. So you might want to go through this list and actually do the research and say, okay, you know what? Don't be afraid to dive into a series, even if you read the first couple of volumes, because you'd be surprised how much you might like it. I was reluctant at the beginning. When I remember my sister gave me my first manga when I was like 14, and I thought, what is this? You're a crazy person. I don't know what you're, and as soon as I started reading it, I was totally enamored with the whole idea of it. And little did I know, all these years later, it was going to be like that popular. So don't be afraid to dive into any of these series and see which series speaks to you. And based on what you like, you'll eventually, I guess, getting a better understanding of the different series that are out there too, because you'll be noticing different illustrators that maybe have some of the same input in some of the same series, different series, get more familiar with the imprints, publishers, and all that.
And the asterisk, Karina, is that like the more advanced ones, like for the next slide? Is that what we did that? Like Death
Yeah.
Note and Bleach,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Black Butler. Yeah, some of those are a little more.
Yeah, because I would say that like if I were recommending those to my middle schoolers, I would probably say anyone who's in 8th grade, that would probably be good for them, especially for the 8th graders who I know are already getting for high school reading, that they can follow the storyline a little bit better, and maybe some of the vocabulary and some of the themes, especially with Black Butler, there's a lot of themes, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, and then it would go into the next slide for more mature reads.
Yeah.
So one of the things you have to pay attention for with manga really is the rating system that's used. And every publisher and publishing house and imprint has kind of a slightly different rating system. But for the most part, you can pay attention to, there's an A or E for everyone. There's a teen that's normally 13 and up. There's a teen that's normally 16 and up. And then there's older teen. An older teen could be 16 and up, 18 and up, or 21 and up. So on the previous slide, some of those with the asterisks are some of those that are considered older teen, 16 and up. So you want to kind of pay attention for that too, for your grouping and your students, because that could mean that mature content, which leads to this slide. These are titles that your kids are going to ask for. They're popular. Food Wars, love it. My high school students loved it. My middle school kids would have loved it, but they do have that older teen, 16 and up, or sometimes 18 and up rating that you need to just kind of be aware of. Food Wars is about food, but there are moments in it that we've got some food orgasms happening. We got some movements, and that's something that our students may not be familiar with. I'm just going to say it. So you kind of have to watch that and pay attention, which is why, as Karina said, you want to start reading some of them. Don't just, everybody says it's good and put it on the shelf. It may not be appropriate for your students. So you want to think about that. Notice I put blue flag here, and it's got a BL because this is a boy love book, but it is completely safe. It's soft. There is no kissing. There is no anything there going on in this book, but it's going to have that title on it. So it's one that kind of gets a little bit mature rating for it. So these are just some great books. All of them are great series, but you have to read them a little bit to see if they're going to fit with what you want to pass out to your students or what's appropriate for your students' maturity level.
So some of the programming and extra things you can do other than just having these books in your library are to create an anime and manga club. The depending on scheduling at your school, it can occur weekly or monthly. You could watch anime and then read the counterpart books or vice versa. You can partner up with your your local public library to do something bigger. APL Austin Public Library prior to COVID, we had a big manga festival that also had, karaoke and cosplay and games and crafts and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of different activities that you can tie to manga to get your students more engaged and working together on projects. And by having it in the library, you are going to get more circulation in your volumes. You're going to build more community with your students, and it's a lot of fun. But you can also do it online as well, especially if that's the way you can reach more students, is through online clubs, through webinars like this, and Zooms and team meetings and things. I run a middle grade comic club through Microsoft Teams, and we're able to get a lot more kids involved because their parents can stay home cooking dinner while their kids are on the Zoom or on the team meetings with me. So online is always an option too if you're wanting to do something outside of those normal school hours.
And I also feel like it's important to say that it's a sense of belonging. A lot of times with my manga students, they may feel like they don't have a place in our campus that's maybe full of football players because we're in Texas, or all of the other little cliques that you're used to. Having a club like this can really help with students feeling like they have found their people and they have found someone else that has that love of anime or manga, and it's great to see, especially in the library, because I feel like it's a great place to have everyone together. So, Karina?
Yeah, so speaking of programming and some club ideas, 40% of my circulation is because of manga, and a couple of librarians in my district also have some of those same statistics. So we got together and thought, what's something that we could do across the district that might be feasible? Well, not just easy, but also feasible, right? I mean, we can't just throw a bunch of funding out there. My budget is very limited for like an anime con, which would be amazing, right? But starting small and seeing what we could do to entice our readers and really take advantage of their knowledge of anime. So high school librarian and I collaborated to offer an anime trivia on Google Classroom, because that's the LMS that we use. And every day, the middle school would ask the high school about different trivia from either a manga or anime series, and then the following day the high schoolers would ask the middle schoolers, and every day whoever answered correctly in the comments were entered for daily giveaways. So the participants that got correct answers were entered into those daily raffles, and they would win some manga books, posters, little trinkets that that we probably collected from the book fairs, and any anime stickers, stuff like that. So it was really fun to get the kids hyped about their love of manga and anime, and it was really great to see that collaboration, because my kids were so excited to like dominate trivia against the high schoolers. They thought, oh, they're in high school, they're probably going to beat us because they know more. Not true. My kids were like totally dominating. It was great. And we worked together coming up with questions that we thought might be good to ask the high schoolers, and the high schoolers worked with their librarian to ask questions for our kids, and it was a lot of fun. So I recommend doing something simple like that. It didn't take much, and all we really did was create trivia questions, post them daily, and then let the kids answer.
So I'm going to chime in. I know we have some more slides, but we did have a great question that came in. So since we're near the end of time, I do want to have a chance to address the attendees' question. And it's more, Rebecca, I know that you touched on this, but how do librarians and educators manage the issues that come up in regards to, the age fit for manga? And especially in regards to heavy issues, maybe like violence, death, and mental health.
I know for me, when I talk to the librarians in my district, because I'm somebody that they come to as a resource and stuff, we talk about what the book is, what is about, where does it fit? If it's a shonen and it is like the mecha, as Leslie said that she likes with the robots and the fighting, is it almost too much? I would not hand, when I was in the middle school, I told my students they could not have Bleach or Death Note. That's a high school and up book, because I knew that those issues were heavy and that students were. Part of it is you've got to become familiar with, one, the rating system, but two, also the books and how the stories go, because you know your students best. In my district, there's high schools that would not put Bleach or Death Note on their shelves because that doesn't work with their student population, what the students need. But also they may look a little closer at some of those other stories. Some of it is just, I hate to say it, it's kind of like when you're doing your fiction books and you have to really become familiar with the story and then what your student population needs. You also might look at it and say, you know what? I deal with middle schoolers. Middle schoolers are what, 12, 13, 14, about age group normally. That's a good number, good set in there. And say, you know what? I'm not going to have anything that is not an everybody teen to start with, And I'm going to maybe really, if it says 13 and up, I'm going to look at it carefully. I'm going to see what it is. If it's fun fantasy violence, I hate to call it fun, but you understand what I mean with fun fantasy violence. We see that in the cartoons all the time. Like even Disney has it. That's different than some of these stories that you're having your zombie piece come in and tell this tale. It is that comfort level, and you have to kind of set, and sometimes you have to draw that line. I, as a librarian in middle school, had no problem drawing the line and saying, this is not going to happen. If it's an older teen rating, OT 16 and up, it will not be in my library.
Yeah, it is definitely a delicate balance. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed with the idea of, reading manga for yourself, one thing that's great is NetGalley, which gives advanced reader copies or, e-copies to lots of titles, has so much manga on it. And so that can be a great resource to read before you buy. Also, if you're looking at some of the older series, go to maybe a public library in the area. And even if you don't read it word for word, give yourself some time to flip through it and then think about, who the audience would be. And if it, sometimes they really match curriculum. We have, manga classics like Hamlet and Othello, and that they may be reading in class. And then, well, maybe different ones for middle school, but they also have, the Cells at Work series that ties in great with science classes. And so there is defense out there and sources out there that really show why these are important to have. And if you're ever looking for support resources of how to defend the purchase of graphic novels and and manga and the art form in general, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund has a lot of instructional resources that are free. And so that's, that may help with guidance and also educating people you work with about the importance. Okay, so we have a drawing contest.
Drawing contest. Yeah, drawing contest. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. Our library services department in my district, we hosted an anime manga drawing contest, and it was open to all secondary students from grade 6 to 12. And we had a middle school and high school category. So these are some examples of the entries that my students submitted, and and the winning one from my campus is the one on top, and I think she got second place or something. And then that design went on a t-shirt, and we gave them out to the kids. It was so fun. It was a lot of fun, and the kids were super excited. And then whoever participated, I provided them an incentive at my library also. I think it was like giving them a manga book, bookmark, some buttons, some stickers. I think at the time it was cold, so hot cocoa or something like that. So yeah, they had a lot of fun. And it's just a nice little way to get the kids really excited about their own artistic abilities. And that's what I absolutely love about manga and anime, is that it captivate students who are so artistically inclined, and they end up dabbling in the library. So that I have a station where I have some paper, pencils, markers, and I tell them, hey, if there's ever, I guess, a time that you just want to grab some paper and doodle, next thing you know, they're showing me all the art that they created, and it's usually in this manga anime, style. And it's really awesome seeing them how artistic they are and their love of literature, but art, and combining those two loves. So nice.
Yeah, so we understand that there are some challenges that go into having manga in your collection. And one of those things is weeding. And we feel like we've all had an experience where a manga title has been weeded because maybe it's a little yellow, which can happen pretty quickly, right, Leslie? And so instead of like getting rid of, I mean, like literally my poor little mangas are some of them are just like inching along, last of their lives, taped like crazy, like, but a lot of times, like what Rebecca said, these titles go out of print, and this might be the only one I have. So I'm not going to weed it like I would my fiction section, because they are harder to replace. And so I don't mind taping those bad boys up every single time they come back to me, because the kids really don't care. And to be honest, it's not really dragging my collection age down, since manga was still fairly new when I got to my library, as far as no one had been purchasing it. So they are, been purchased in the last several years, but they do go through a lot. These kids check them out. And like Karina said, 40% of her checkouts come from that. And I would have to agree with that as well for my library. And so, yeah, it's hard to keep them on the shelf because they're always out, which means they're going to be worn. And a lot of them are not hardback. Like a lot of them are going to be paperback. So you just have to kind of be aware of that going in. They're not going to look as pristine maybe as your fiction section or your nonfiction section. And then starting from scratch, what does that look like? If you are coming to a library, kind of like I did this at elementary, came in, no graphic novels. Like, I kid you not. Came into my middle school, some graphic novels, hardly any manga. So when you're starting from scratch, please refer to like our list that we provided of the series. Be very careful of how long some of these series are. Like Naruto is probably never, ever, ever, ever going to stop. And so when you see that it has like, 200 volumes, please do not be, overwhelmed by that. Please do not think you have to purchase all 200 volumes. That's impossible. There is no way to keep up with that kind of demand, which is hard for me because I'm very much a person in my fiction section. If I have the series, I want to have all of the series, but it's just, you gotta have to kind of reconcile with the fact that that's probably just not going to happen with you in manga. And so just starting with the first 5 is usually good, and then referring them to the library. Or I have Comics Plus through Mackin as a resource in my library for my students. So they're able to read a lot of these on their iPads online. And so just to get them interested, just to get them hooked, just to get them started, is give them that little taste. And then obviously some of them that are very popular. I have a lot of My Hero Academia in my library, because I know that it doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, they're not going to read them in order. I know that they're not there. And so they'll grab number 68 of the series and they don't care. And so I do have a lot of those, but again, I'm never going to have them all. Any other challenges y'all can think of that I did not mention?
I'm just gonna mention that I know that some people have some questions about like the weeding and when to get rid of them, but getting rid of them because maybe they don't look as pristine. But when I tell the kids it's new, take care of it. It's paperback. You have to be extra gentle. I've noticed as long as I have that conversation with them, they do really well at bringing them back, and they they take care of them. And I tell them, if you don't take care of it, then the next person can't read it. And then maybe if you want to reread it, you can't reread it because you destroyed it. So they're actually they're actually really good at taking care of the books. And at the Oh, yeah. Okay. So, um, so this is a lot of fun to do, actually. Speaking of my kids, a lot of the kids they want to read manga, but they didn't know where to begin, or they weren't sure where they were on the shelves. So we put them in a specific section in the library. I have this blue wall. So the bookshelves that are on the blue wall, I put all the manga specifically there. So they ask, okay, where is it? It's on the blue wall. So on the blue wall, all the shelves are there with all the manga. And I figured, okay, well, I want some kind of signage that's going to pop. And I actually saw somebody do this on Pinterest. So I went to Twitter and said, who was the original person? And thank God for Twitter, because we found her. And to thank her, I created these labels for some of the major series that I have in the library, and I stuck them into binders, and that's how I separated them. And these were old binders that were in a storage room that nobody was using. And I know some people use like those magazine or folder separators. I don't have money for that, but I did have old binders that nobody was using, and I stuck the label in there and I use them as separators. So that's been really cool, because then the kids go and they're like, oh, there's DBZ, oh, there's Zelda, and they know, and it really helps with my library ambassadors when they're putting away the series and they're helping me shelve, they know exactly where they go. So that's been excellent. And it pops too.
We are at time, and so I know some of y'all probably have questions, and if you're watching the recording afterwards and you think of something that you really wanted addressed by us, feel free to reach out to us. We're all pretty active on Twitter, and we do promote a lot of the Maverick list titles on Twitter. So you can even search for the hashtag Maverick list, and you'll see lots of recommendations. And we are here to support you, whatever questions you may have after the fact. And we hope you have a great rest of your conference. It's been a pleasure talking to y'all today, and we hope you had fun.